Tabernacle United Methodist Church, or anybody who's interested in one of Virginia Beach's historical landmarks, not just a landmark, but a place where people have come together to celebrate their faith, to be in community for many, many years. I just got here in July of 2020, but grew up on the same district as Tabernacle, and so had different friends who were here throughout the years, and was even mentored by the pastor who came before me, Jack Davis, and so it's just wonderful to be serving as minister. But I don't know a whole lot about the history other than what I can kind of dig up on the internet, and I have got a local expert with me, Ann Henley. I was joking with her that she was born in one of the pews back here. She has been at Tabernacle her whole life. Mm-hmm. And Ann is going to share all kinds of things with us about what's unique in the building. There's so many amazing stories that go along with each of these little attributes that you might come in and think, oh, it's a beautiful historical church, but they hold such memories and stories of people of faith. And so Ann, would you tell us a little bit of your background, kind of the highlights of your time at Tabernacle?
I'm Ann Riggs Henley. I've been going here for many years. My dad attended this church. He lived right across the street growing up, and one of my ancestors, Ole Whitehurst, helped to build the church. So my family goes back, like several families in the church, planted in this neighborhood, and this neighborhood actually was called Sigma. Sigma started at Tabernacle Bridge. They used to have a gate across the bridge to keep the farm animals in. There were county gates. You had to get out of your vehicle, open the gate, shut it, go where you're going, and make sure no animals escaped. But there's several in the community that have long, long ties to Tabernacle. This church was built in 1830. And there used to be it was called a temperance hall, or Sunday school used to be, as we call it, the locals here, on the creek side of the church, which is the west side of the church. And that burnt down. They were they had a fire in a potbelly stove, and the ashes blew out through the chimney and caught the roof on fire. The cedar shakes and burnt that down, but they were able to save this building. And we going to go outside and start at the beginning of the church and
work our way through. Perfect. All right, so Ann, we are outside of the main sanctuary building, and this is the building you mentioned was established, or the church was established, the building in 1830. I really want you to just walk us around in this sanctuary, and as you see things, tell us about them, tell us stories that you have with them. I want you all to get to experience what it's like to hear and remember different things and tell these amazing stories about this particular body of faith. So we'll start with the exterior and go from there.
The exterior of the church, actually, the wooden part is made out of cypress boards. It was passed down 3 generations that they had a sawmill right on site, that they cut the trees in the swamps, brought the cypress trees up, and milled them to whatever length and what they needed. Everything was done right on site. The northex, which we call it, is where the bell and the steeple was not there until 1908. Before that, you just walked into the main door.
And I know we can't pressure wash the outside because it's made out of that particular type of wood and painted just so. It has to be very gently washed, and so I've learned lots of different things, and glad I didn't make it over here to pressure wash too early.
Also, the church was placed on the Virginia Beach Historic site, one of their sites that they have within the city, and it has to be, to get on that, it has to be a building that has been historically kept to the best that we can without changing many features. We're walking into what is called the North X. This building, this section was added in 1908. We have a bell that is several feet up, and if anybody ever gets a chance to go up to the crawl space with a 20-foot ladder, the beams in the attic look like they've just been milled. They look like new wood because they've never seen light. And they're all put together with pegs, wooden pegs. The bell that we have, it has I don't remember the name of the company, but it was made in Philadelphia. And we have 2 rings to the bell. The one on the west side is the bell that you ring in the morning. And when I was small, growing up on Colchester Road, Mr. Amos Eaton, which is Garland's father, would ring the bell before Sunday school, an hour before Sunday school, and Mom would say, "Hurry up, finish milking those cows, feed those pigs, but you have to be to church in an hour." The one on this side is a funeral bell. When you ring it, it's 2 small, soft, mellow rings.
Original entrance.
Original doors.
And were they always pocket doors like this?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow, okay.
And they're supposedly still supposed to work. I don't know if they
Oh, I'm sure they.
1908, when the church was renovated, there was a slave balcony above here. And that was removed when this bigger addition was added on because there was 2 stairways, one stairway that came down, I think it was on the west side. The pews were put in then. Before that, there were just benches that were in the church. The windows that we have are all original. We're to 1908, I think. I don't think they're earlier windows. They did have panes in them, but they weren't the colored glass. On the back of the wall here, we have a plaque that was I guess the church did it, or somebody presented it to the church for all the men who served in World War II. And that was put away when we remodeled the church in 1978. And I redid it and brought it back to the church. The pews in the church, I don't know if I mentioned this, they were just benches. Just
No
a few
back to them?
benches. No backs.
No back support. You had to pay attention in
That's
church.
right,
I
you
love
did.
it. Okay.
We added the cushions in the pews, and when we remodeled the building, we had to remove all the pews, or everything had to go to the back of the building while they were restoring the front of the church. And once they did that, then we brought the pews back after we had stripped them and refinished them. The inside was pretty good when in 1978, except for the back here, it was eaten up with termites. And that was the reason the church was closed, and we built the new building, the fellowship hall. We held church there, I think, until like 1980 something. I can't remember when we moved back into here. It was about 10 years because we didn't work on the building for about 8 years after it was closed, because the district superintendent and the Methodist Church would not allow us to start restoration on the church because they didn't think that we could raise enough money to restore it. So we had an estimate. It was $102,000 from W.B. Meredith, which was quite a bit in 1977 when we got the estimate. And they told us, the district superintendent told us that we can start work when we raise half the money. In 6 months, we raised half the money, and when the building was finished, it was paid off.
Yep, tell somebody from Tabernacle they can't do something.
I know.
It'll happen.
When you get a bunch of women together that says we're going to raise money, we raise money. Yeah. But it was a lot of hard work put into it to raise the funds. But I think what was most interesting, we had people that passed this church daily, and they would stop and they would go, "Oh, I see you're refinishing the church," and they would give us a check. You know, sometimes it was $10, sometimes once it was $2,000. So it was, people in the community wanted the church to be restored, and thankfully we were able to do it.
And tell me a little bit about your favorite pew. I think that's a
My
neat
favorite
reflection.
pew?
Yeah, your pew. Is it this one right here?
My family always sat on the second pew from the back. I have 4 brothers. We would sit in there and we would get giggling. We would get giggling because the windows would be open in the summertime. The wasps would fly in, land on the ladies' hats or on the men who had bald heads, and they would just slide off. We'd get laughing, and they would get Mom laughing, and the whole pew would be shaking, and then the people at the end would get laughing. But Mom would always sit on the second pew from the back because she said when you have a visitor, usually they want to be the first person out of the church, and if we're right at the back, we can greet them. So Mom did that, and I continue to do that.
Awesome. That's a beautiful legacy to carry out.
As you walk through the church, there are hooks that are on the ceiling, and those hooks were used to lower the kerosene lamps until they had electricity, and they didn't get electricity in this area until like 1950. Which seems really awkward, but it was in the 50s. And I think there's 6, I don't know, maybe it's 3 or 4, but they were left there just to remind people. But a lot of people, they look up and what's the hook for? I said, well, let me tell you. On each side of the church, between the first and second window up front, there was chimneys, and that's where the potbelly stoves sat until the 1930s, I believe, is when they took them out, and that's how they heated the interior of the church.
Wow. And I know further up you can kind of see the burn marks from where they sat, can't you?
Mm-hmm. My aunt, Melva Riggs, actually, she's my great aunt, had played the piano here probably for about 60 years. And when we were small, we'd all be standing out, and the men would always stand out front, and Uncle Travis would say, the band started up, we better get in. Get in before the preacher comes and gets us. And he
still will.
and Uncle Travis would sit back. The men would always sit on the west side of the church. The ladies would sit on the east side, and mainly because this building was the only building that we held Sunday school and worship in. The men's Sunday school class started out on this side of the church, and the ladies on the right-hand side, and they continued. When it came time for worship, they didn't get up, they didn't move, they just sat right where they were. Uncle Travis would be sitting over here, and he was quite loud. He was hard of hearing, and about the time the offering plates would be passed around, he would say, all right, he said, the hopper's coming, get your money out. Just cute old, expressions that, as long as you can remember an expression that somebody of that age said, they will always be alive in your heart. You'll never ever forget them and their expressions. And we had Miss Ava Carroll. She played the organ, it seemed like forever. She was 102 when she died. Aunt Melva was 100.
I know.
And as we get closer up to the front of the church, when we remodeled the church and restored it in 1978, the choir loft on the left-hand side was not there. When you came in from the back of the church, you just walked up the steps that are there, and you just entered into the altar area, and you went over, the choir went over and sat in the choir loft. The choir loft on this side is the original, and when we remodeled, they copied it to put on the left-hand side. The altar was moved, everything in the front of the church was moved forward. It said 6 foot in the estimate that I read this morning from the contractor. And when he did that, it made the altar area bigger because everything was moved forward and out. So they had to replace some of the spindles in the on the altar, and they're on the outer edges, and I think it's about a dozen of them. But all of those we had to get the old paint off and bring it back to the natural wood, and I think it's walnut, we were told. The same thing with the front of the church. Everything was painted white. So we did a lot of stripping to get the strippies to get the paint off. And when they moved the altar forward, they found wood underneath of it, and it's what they made a cross that's hanging in the church now. The two side buildings, the two side rooms were not on the church, and they were added to level out the church because we needed some place for people to come in and a fire escape, as we were told, on the other side. So we added the two rooms, but you came into the church through the doors that we have there now. The existing doors is how you got into the side into the building. Onto the west side of the church, we had a small building out there that we used for the Lotus Festival, which was held 2 weeks, every day for 2 weeks. And they would come into the side door to get food out of the back of the church. And we always had our ham and chicken salad, and the ladies would bring, every day they would bring whatever vegetables they had in their garden. So we never knew what we were going to have until they brought it that day. And the local funeral homes loaned us tents, so we had tents set out for them, our customers, to set. I was 8 when it started, so it was 1958, and I've worked it since I was 9. All the chairs that we have up front in the altar area where the preacher sits and our readers, they're original to the church. The pulpit is original, and we have 2 tables that are on the altar. We had one table I think it was in the 1960s, or maybe early 70s. It was a family, Herbert Meredith lived at Sandbridge, and he saw the table that we had, and he said, "I've got a table just like that, I think." So he brought his table, and these are actually, there are 2 tables that we have put together with the top. And I mean, how ironic is that, that he came from Norfolk. He wasn't, local. But it worked out perfect.
Beautiful. Do you know when the baptismal font came in?
Actually, yes, that was given. We had a granddaughter who passed away. She was just 2 weeks old, and we didn't have a baptismal font, so my husband and I bought that in memory of her. It's got a little plaque on it. 1996.
What a beautiful gift.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought the story of the cross, I know you said the wood was found down here, but was it from the original balcony?
It could have been. They don't know where it came from.
Oh,
it could have been.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and we had a church member, which was actually a cousin of Norwood Land.
Mm-hmm.
Her husband built it. It was a Belanger that lived, not the Belangers down the road here, but ones that lived in the other part of the city had built it. He was a woodmaker. Yeah. But it wasn't, that's exactly what the wood looked like. It was beautiful when they pulled all this wood out. So it could have been. It was a lot of wood underneath there.
So we are in Tabernacles Parlor, and this is the room that's just off the doors you see in the back of the sanctuary. And I know my office is back here. I know there used to be outhouses.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of where my knowledge ends. So
before my time.
I want to before your time. Did you hear that? Okay. She knows a lot, but she wasn't here when there was an outhouse. So
Only at my
you take it away.
Only at my grandfather's.
Your grandfather. Okay. Good.
Yeah, the parlor was basically used for church purposes. It was if somebody back in up until 1930s or 40s, people actually, when someone died, they were laid out in the parlor of their home. Mm-hmm. And because there really weren't many funeral homes. Mm-hmm. In a parlor here, they had their family members also could be laid out here if they had a smaller home. And it was also a place that the people could gather after church. I was married in the church here in 1969. Actually, we were the last couple to be married here before the church was closed. And they had said, no, you're going to have to get married somewhere else. I said, oh no, we will mark off the pews, people can't sit, and we're limited. But this is where we had our reception.
Oh, wow.
And when we did, it was only like three-fourths this, well, probably half this size, 5/8, because the back part was a kitchen.
Oh, okay.
But when you came into the parlor, the Sunday school room here was for the children. There were 2 children's rooms here where the pastor's offices was the nursery, and I think they're still there. There were little railings around the side, like a little shelf is where they put the toys. So the children couldn't play with them while they were teaching a lesson, and then after they were doing their lesson, they could play with the toys. Where the office was the young adult Sunday school room, and then over to the other side it was called the Excelsior class. And that's where, as we called it back then, it was the old ladies' Sunday school room, which was 60 and up. So I guess I would be in there now.
Oh, we don't call anybody an old lady around here.
We don't do. Well, that's what the teenagers did.
Yep. Oh, I know. I'm just saying it doesn't happen anymore.
Of course not. And there were 2 rooms upstairs. The one up here with the men's Sunday school eventually, and then on the other side is where the young adults, teenagers.
So you could stomp and make noise and irritate the old ladies class? Perfect. I think it's set up that way in every church.
And then when you came down the steps, they were standing there waiting for you. And in the back of the church here, there was about where the beam is overhead, it looked like a shower curtain type of a rod that went around all the way to the door and to where the furnace room wasn't closed off. That's where the kitchen was. We had a sink, a stove, and a little bit of a countertop and a refrigerator, and the furnace in the back that cut off almost every Sunday. Would puff out. You go to church, you see this black smoke coming out of the chimney, and Mom goes, well, I guess we should have wore our heavy coats because it's going to be cold today. And the bathroom, the ladies' bathroom, was where a little closet is here. The men had to go outside. There was still a door out back with the steps, and that was the men's bathroom.
Oh, okay. Yep.
So.
And I know behind the parsonage where I live, there's the old battery house. So was that before electricity got here, that you could run some kind of power across the street?
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
All right. And now, Ann, we are out here at the Heritage Garden, and in addition to knowing everything about Tabernacle, Ann also heads up our Heritage Committee, and I want you to tell us all about that too.
The Heritage Committee started, I believe, in the early 70s, right after we moved in this building. Anna Townsend, who was a longtime member, and Vernon Bonney came to several of us at church and said there's got to be a way that we can put money aside if the buildings need to have work done on them, where we're not having to go to the bank and draw a lot of money out if we don't have it. So they came up with the Heritage Committee, and they devised a plan where they would they raised money, and mostly the purpose was for the white building, but then we also have problems at the church and at the parsonage. So then we started using the money for other things. We can never touch, we're not supposed to touch the principal. We can only use the interest that's in it. But over the years, I think we have used close to $50,000 for the buildings, and we still have a nice sum in it. But one of the things to raise money was that for $100, I think it's $100, you could buy a brick in memory or honor of somebody. and they started this brick garden to raise the money for the Heritage Fund, and we all that money goes back into the Heritage Fund. It stays there, and each quarter I can figure out how much interest it goes back into. We keep a tally of the interest, and in 2020 and 2021 there's not much interest, as everybody knows, on what they have. But when it was started, interest rates were very high. We had CDs, and you were getting a lot of money on interest. But so the Heritage Garden is really a way you can remember your loved ones, at the same time help the church. And we have the Boy Scouts put the flag up. And through the Heritage Fund, we also redid a church cookbook, the yellow cookbook. That money goes into the Heritage Fund. And then we have people that give monthly toward the Heritage Fund, or just give money to the Heritage Fund. But it was a way to help to preserve our buildings and always have money available.
No one could ever tell you couldn't do it again. There you go. I see a lot of familiar names, and I need a copy of the cookbook. Okay. I've loved a good church cookbook. I did not know this existed.
That is the best cookbook.
Those are the recipes you need. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh. I see lots of names that I...
This back part was added on in 1933. Before that, it was just the front of the church, and over to my right here, there's a window there that's in the choir loft, sort of, kind of, and that was the back of the church. There was only one window out on the back side.
Wow. And
So
all of those windows open, or
they're supposed to open, yeah.
Yeah.
They're probably painted shut by now. But yes, there was in the back here, Miss Ollie Land had the we called it the MYF back then, Methodist Youth Fellowship, and we would have up to about 20 teenagers every Sunday night. I mean, there was in the late 50s and 60s, there was nothing else to do.
Yeah.
I mean, for us to go grocery shopping, we had to go to Jana Shopping Center. We had to go to Norfolk to get our school clothes.
I just moved from there, and that is a hike. Oh my goodness.
I mean, there was just no stores around, which was nice. I mean, we didn't know any better when we had to go somewhere. You took a cooler wherever you went because your food would thaw up before you got home.
Yeah.
But this rural area, there's several families in the church still that grew up in this church. It's a wonderful church. We have such great fellowship. And they say the church, I asked somebody, their church had burnt down. This is on our way to the mountains. Families that we know go to the church, and they go, yeah, we're going to rebuild. And I said, but everybody was safe. And they said, yes. I said, well, a church is a building, but the church is the people. And it's the fellowship. We have such great fellowship in Tabernacle. Once we get out of all this virus, you will begin to learn how the fellowship, how we care for one another. And I think we're such a caring church, and the people in it.
Yeah, even from a safe distance, I felt so loved and welcomed from the moment I set foot here. So I can't wait till it's accompanied by hugs and all of that good stuff. And food, I can't wait to eat here one day. It'll happen. It's got to.
It will.
So for a while you couldn't get in this building, and it wasn't being renovated yet because they didn't think you could raise the money. And so there was this other building built. And so tell me about what is now our fellowship hall building.
That building was built and opened right before we closed this building, so we did have a place to worship. That was built mainly to serve as another church until we could renovate this church. There was a lot of controversy about whether we could raise the money or not. Some people in the church just wanted to tear it down and start all over again, and then there was a hardcore that wanted to renovate it. So we built the fellowship hall up, and the main room that we use for donors, and now we had a altar up front. We held service there for about 10 years, and we used every one of the Sunday school rooms. Actually, it was really nice to have a new building with all new modern kitchen was the main thing. So when we had donors, we didn't have this little place in the back. But we used, that building was built in, I believe it was 1969 it was finished. And then we moved from this building over, closed this one up completely. But that fellowship hall has brought a lot of people into the church. It has served many lunches there, and donors that we've had, a lot of fundraisers to raise money for this building. We had anything from fish fries to chicken fries to barbecues to raffles, which the Methodist doesn't like, but we did it in a little way.
It's not real gambling, is it?
No. We did anything imaginable you could think to raise money. We made sandwiches, took them over to Princess Anne Courthouse. We took orders beforehand. And when you get a bunch of ladies together and you tell them that it can't be done, don't ever tell a bunch of country girls that you can't get something done. Because it was all done, and it was done, and it was fun. It was hard work, but in the end, the reward to have this building back and to also have a bigger building where we can expand our church and our fellowship and what we do as a church has been rewarding.
Yeah. The space has offered the opportunity for a lot of people to not only be part of this community, but to get to know Jesus and to keep experiencing that discipleship and fellowship, everything. And so how nice to have both spaces now where we can worship, we can fellowship, one day with food. I hear the food is really good, so I'm just like, I am ready to eat out here. But it's just so awesome when you think of all of the saints of the church who have come through this place and have made their mark on Tabernacle, not just the physical things that you've shown us, but especially through those stories that you've told about the joy, the hospitality that your mom taught you about, and making sure that people didn't go unnoticed, that they were all greeted when they were visiting. Just all of those little stories that are connected to some physical piece of this building. It's a beautiful thing, and thank you so much for sharing all of that with me today and with anybody who's watching, and especially with our Tabernacle family, who some of them may not know these amazing stories. So
You're welcome.
I bet you have more too. So.
I do. I have a lot. We don't think we have enough time for them all.
Yep. You better tell me them over the years, though. I love hearing stuff like that.